afternoon. Welcome to our second webinar in the Shifting the Mindset series, Reimagining Corporate Culture. I'm Jennifer Sproul, president of the Maryland Center for Construction Education and Innovation, the nonprofit behind the series. I'm joined here today with Dana Galvin-Lancourt, VP of Branding and Communications of Barton Malow Holdings. Good afternoon, Dana. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jen. I'm really excited to be here.
We're going to get started in a second, but I just want to take a moment to thank you for agreeing to come on today. As a former Barton Malow team member, I know firsthand what a great job you all do creating such an amazing place to work. We've all heard the daunting numbers. 240,000 people are needed in our industry in this year alone. 41% of our workforce will retire in the next 10 years. The race for talent has already been difficult, but it's going to get harder and harder to fill positions. And we here at MCCI believe that one of the ways to set your company apart is to focus on making your firm a place people want to get up and go to every day. And that's more than just how much you're paying them or what your benefits package is. So today, Dana isn't going to just talk to us about why culture is important, but share with us some concrete ways that you can start making changes at your company. For our viewers, we're streaming today on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So if you want to ask any questions or comments, please do so on whatever platform you're using, and we'll get them to Dana. With that, I'll turn this over to you.
Great. Thank you so much again, Jennifer and MCCEI, for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm also excited to know that this is streaming on 3 different platforms right now. So that's very cool. I would encourage, if you're watching this live, please ask questions. Certainly, we will have time at the end to answer any questions that come in live. And if you're not streaming live, if you're watching this afterwards, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so feel free to send me a message and we can chat. But just a little foray into myself and my role at Barton Malow. Barton Malow, we are a construction enterprise. We've been around for almost 100 years. Our headquarters is in Michigan. We have 14 offices nationwide, and we have almost 3,000 employees at this point, which is really, really exciting. We have grown exponentially through the years, and it is just such an amazing place to be. I've been with the firm for 14 and a half years and have served in a lot of different capacities during that time. But there was a moment in my career where I was on the marketing side and was asked to really shift into a role that was solely focused on internal communications and employee engagement. At the time, our president had just started in his role as president. He had grown up in the firm and he had just became president, and one of his goals was employee engagement and internal communications. And I'll never forget the one thing he said is, I want everyone inside of Barton Malow to know what's going on before people outside of Barton Malow knows what's going on. And so I had my marching orders and I took on the role, and it really was, and it has continued to be, such a defining moment in my career, and so rewarding because you know who your audience is, you have a good sense of who they are and what they're about. But once you really start to engage with them, talk with them more, get feedback from them, and start to build a company environment that really serves them, that's part of why we're on such a huge growth trajectory, is we've really honed into our talent, and we know how to keep them motivated. So I think that's only going to get more and more important as time goes on. And as Jen mentioned, the war on talent was here, it is here, and it will continue to be here for many years to come. There's just not enough people to do all of the work that needs to be done. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about what culture is, how we define it at Barton Malow, the things that we have done along the way to really define our culture and engage with our culture and strengthen it through the years. I will say that it's not a one size fits all. When we talk about corporate culture, it really has to be what fits with you and your firm. So what works for us at Barton Malow might not work for you, but I really encourage you to think about, how can you align your corporate culture initiatives with all of your goals at your firm. So we'll talk about that a little bit more to come. So, all right, moving along. So how do you define corporate culture? There's lots of definitions out there, but when we look at it, it's really encompasses the values and the behaviors that you want to see within your organization. It's a shared set of goals, attitudes, practices. We talk a lot about traditions and legacy of what people think of when they hear your company's name. So there's a lot of symbolism that can be involved with that. But I think the biggest thing, in my opinion, is consistency. And so if you want your culture to be one thing, then the behaviors need to be consistent for many, many years to come. It's not something that you snap a finger and it becomes one thing. It's something that has to continue over time and be practiced over time for people to truly see the results of a good company culture. So why is culture important? Well, I think we already hit on that a little bit when we talk about the fact that, there is a war on talent. And while a lot of people think, everyone's just here for a paycheck or for a benefits package or, those kinds of things, people spend a lot of time working. Now we might not go to the office every single day or be in a specific location every day, but even more so, we have to have a reason to get up in the morning, to sit behind a desk somewhere or do our jobs somewhere and be motivated, right? I mean, being motivated to get up in the morning and just to continue to put the effort in place, there has to be a reason behind it. And that is why culture is so important. A couple of numbers just on, I like bringing up some data. This is from a Forbes survey that was done a few years back. 68% of job seekers consider a company's culture the most important factor. I would argue that number has probably gone up as a result of COVID. 28% of executives say they understand their organization's culture. I think that number has gone up as well, because I do believe that executives and leadership are understanding how important culture is. Like I said, this survey is a few years old at this point. I do believe that they are understanding that what they do within the firm is very impactful to the employee experience. And then organizations with strong cultures have much higher employee engagement rates. Yeah, I think that's probably doesn't need to be said, but it's there. The more that you engage with your employees, the more that they feel like they know what's going on, they have all the information they need to do their job, they have all the tools, and they know what are we trying to accomplish here. The stronger your culture is going to be. So how do you build corporate culture? And because so much of my experience has been at Barton Malow in this space, pretty much all my experience has been at Barton Malow in this space. I mean, I'm going to refer to a lot of examples, so please bear with me throughout this presentation. But starting at the very beginning, I do think it's important to establish a set of values, of goals, of a core purpose for why you do what you do. Some people could call this your company's mission, but what is that rallying cry that makes the people in your company, your firm, come to work every day, do what they do? For us at Barton Malow, it's building with the American spirit, people, projects, and communities. And I will say, while I wasn't in the room during the evolution of creating that core purpose, we have worked to really understand it through the years and talk about how it came to be what it was. We established this core purpose in 2012, and part of who we are at Barton Malow, we are selling people essentially, right? We are a general contracting construction management firm, and the biggest asset we have in our organization is our people. So for us, building people is the most important part of what we do, because we know that we need those people in order to build our projects and to serve our communities. So that's why people is first. That's why it's, the biggest word on top, and it's something that we're very focused on. When we set out to establish this core purpose, we also looked at our core values. And at Barton Malow, we always had core values. But in 2012, we really took a look at, what were those words and how can we define them more clearly so that people understand exactly what they mean. So I think before they were something like integrity, teamwork, and I'm not sure what the third one was, but we reestablished them. We really looked at those words, and we reestablished them as integrity, partnership, and empowerment. You'll notice underneath each of those core values, we have a few bullets on what integrity, what each of these values mean. For integrity, it means making the right and fair decision in every situation. It means demonstrating consistency between words and actions and honoring all commitments. I think a lot of firms will have core values. They'll throw up a set of words of, here's what our values are. But not everyone takes the time to distinguish what each of those mean, and then talk about it further, which is what we do, is we show cases of when our values have been realized. Initially, when we launched into redefining these core values and communicating it to our whole organization, we did videos on a monthly basis where we would take a core value and we would align it to a person or a specific case study type of scenario and say, this is what empowerment looks like at Barton Malow, and here's how it happened. So I do encourage that when you set out, to establish core values in your firm, really take the time to define them, because that's going to provide so much more clarity to the people that work for you and what your expectations are of them. All right. So what does culture look like at Barton Malow, or what can culture look like? We talked a little, I mentioned earlier, it can be like a set of symbols. It can be definitions. It can be, legacy programs. It can be awards programs. It can be, just all of those cultural elements that you do along the way. I threw up on this slide a few of the different things that we do at Barton Malow, and things that just really align us as an organization. Next to that core purpose and values document, you see leadership at Barton Malow. So something we took on very early on our cultural journey was defining, what does it mean to be a leader at Barton Malow? Guys, I'll admit, none of this is rocket science. A lot of it was reading books, looking at other leadership examples and figuring out how to apply it to who we are innately as an organization at Barton Malow. So we define the critical elements of being a leader at Barton Malow. Those things are being able to set direction, being able to align resources, to motivate, inspire, and to build relationships. And I'll tell you that as leaders, we're measured on not just doing, our job, but also on how do we align with the leadership model? Where are there areas that we need to work on? All of us, no matter who you are in the organization, all of us have areas that we need to work on with that leadership model, self-included. So it's a good reminder. It's something that we look at when we look at promotions, when we look at candidates for new roles. It's definitely aligned with the types of questions that we ask potential candidates when they're joining our firm. But we really want to get into, what does leadership look like at Barton Malow? The next thing you'll see on the top right-hand side is what kind of innovator are you? And part of our, determining what our core purpose was and our core values were, we also establish a long-term goal of what we're trying to achieve in the construction industry. And innovation was a big part of that. This is another place where I feel like, people can throw around words like innovation and say, oh, we want to be innovative. Well, what does being innovative mean? Everyone has a different definition of that. Some people might rely really heavily on technology to accomplish that, and so on. So it's another place where we just took the opportunity to define innovation. It was important enough in our firm that we wanted people to know what innovation was like. A couple of other really fun things we do. We do a book club at Barton Malow. So we pick basically one book a year at this point that we focus the entire organization on. And it helps us continue to have these conversations and drive home our expectations of our employees, how they behave and how they act. Our most recent book that we read together was Dare to Lead. Generally, we give people a couple months to read the book, and we will host different types of book club discussions. Some of them will be online. Prior to COVID, they were in person. We did most of them online this past year, obviously, but we'll do little chats. We also have constant Yammer feed going on. So there was times where we would post a question about, what did you think about that chapter or that concept? But I will say for the last 5 years, we've had a book that we have read as an organization, and it's really helped to bring us together and to think about things a little bit differently and think about, think about behavior and stuff outside of even the context of our business, right? It's something that can help you even develop yourself over time for whatever situation you're in, whether it be, maybe something at your church, something in a community organization you're involved in, heck, maybe even your own family. Some of this stuff can help you out. And so I'll talk a little bit more about communication in the coming slides, but some of the other elements on this slide is about how we communicate to our employees, and that is super duper important when it comes to building your cultural program. If it, for people to understand the expectations, for there to be consistency, the biggest part of that is, there has to be consistency in communication. I'll talk about that in the coming slides. So one piece of developing your culture and then continuing to hone in on that culture and make it relevant, make it consistent, is getting feedback on how you're doing, or even getting feedback on what is your culture, what defines your employee base at this time. We've been on our cultural journey, like I said, since 2012, where we've really spent a lot of time and resources on it. And so we've tried a lot of different feedback mechanisms, and they all kind of have their time in the sun, and then we kind of sunset them and move on to the next feedback mechanism. So right now we are in a season where we do something called Feedback Friday. And about every other Friday. I mean, I will admit some Fridays we skip them, or sometimes we do back-to-back Fridays. But, I would say on average, about every other Friday, we ask our team members a question. And it can be a whole host of things that we ask them about. And it's generally, one question where there's a ranking involved, another question where they can type in the answer. And we have asked them about things like, during COVID, we asked them a lot about how are you doing? And there was like a drop down of examples. And on a quarterly basis, we asked them this question, which is tied to employee net promoter score. We don't have to get deep into that, but it's, basically it's basically measuring loyalty to your organization. We've asked people about what they think of our benefits that we offer them. We've asked them when we've had in-person events, what they thought of the events. We do kind of mini pulses sometimes where if we have a set of new employees come in, we ask them how their employee experience has been thus far. So basically every other Friday, we are surveying almost all of our employees, sometimes a subset of our employees, and really trying to hone in on what is like the sentiment that is being experienced at this time. None of it is required. It's also completely anonymous. People can self-select and share like their tenure, their location, their job function or department, but they don't have to answer that part of the survey because really we just want feedback. We don't really care who they are. If that's what they're thinking, like there's probably more people like them thinking that as well. And we review the feedback at a leadership level, at lots of different leadership levels. Where we see areas of challenge, we kind of send in the SWAT team, whether it be a set of leaders or HR in conjunction with leaders, or it can also help us figure out where we haven't communicated maybe well enough up until this point. So the really great thing about getting this continuous feedback is you really know where your employees are at any given time. There's lots of different tools out there. I mean, you can use SurveyMonkey. That's a very easy tool that a lot of people are used to using. There's also very sophisticated tools out there. We have a tool called Waggle that we use right now, waggl.com, if you want to check it out. But kind of anything and everything in between there is as well. And I will say on a biweekly basis, we tend to get about a 30 to 35% response rate, which anyone who does surveys knows that that's a pretty solid number. You're pretty happy with like 20 to 25%. And given the frequency of them and the fact that our surveys are only open for about a week, we're pretty happy with the 30 to 35%. I will say we ask the question on Friday. Generally, the majority of the answers come in on Friday. It goes out first thing Friday morning. I think personal opinion is people are like, oh, I can do this. Like it's only 2 questions. I can do this. It's Friday. It feels like I accomplished something and, feels like I did something before my week ended. So, we are always a little hesitant about it, but Friday has definitely worked out well for us. And like I said, do it about every other Friday. We've been doing this for about 2 years now and have a lot of really great feedback through the years. We also acknowledge the feedback through a lot of our communication mechanisms and say like, hey, this is what we heard you say. This is what we're going to do about it. And I think because people have seen the results of their feedback, it does encourage them to use that, to take the survey more. So that is a critical piece of our cultural programs. Another critical piece, I think, of any cultural program is some type of awards or recognition program. And again, I think this is something that you need to look at your individual firm and figure out what works best for you or what makes the most sense for you. With Barton Malow being as large as it is, we have several different types of ways that we recognize employees. We have an Awards of Excellence program where we give a builder, a leader, an impact, and a craftsman award every year. This past year, we started a You Rock program, which was kind of, I would frame it a little bit like Employee of the Month, but it's, more of like the transactional recognition type of program, whereas the Awards of Excellence is more like longevity of what you've done maybe through the years. We have a very active service award program for 5-year increments where we recognize people at 5, 10, 15, all the way up. I think one of our longest recognitions is someone who had 50 years of service, which is always really exciting. But I think one of the things that has been most really just caught on is something that we call People at Barton Malow. And these are just spotlights of different team members from all over the organization. And it's something that we post on our intranet on a very regular basis. We used to do it monthly, but it got to the point where people were like, I want to be a person at Barton Malow. I want to be a person at Barton Malow. So now we're doing it bi-weekly. So, every other week we have a person at Barton Malow that we highlight, and we have a set of questions that we ask them to answer. They don't have to answer all of them. Some of them are more fun than others, but we post these on, like I said, our intranet where people just get to meet their team members. They're likely people that they've never gotten to meet before. We really try to stay away from the leadership level. We try to focus in on more of, the people that are really doing the hard work every single day. And you can see in the top right-hand corner of the slide, we have a mechanism on our intranet where you can like or you can comment, kind of like Facebook, on an article. And I'll tell you, that's for Lachey, that's actually, I think the slide is a little bit old. These things have caught on where someone will have 60 some likes and there'll be just 20 different comments wow, that's so cool that, you like the movie. I just saw Major League on here, but that's not about a movie. But hey, that's funny that you love that movie, Major League. My favorite part of the movie is this. There's just so many times where people are able to build connection with one another, even though they've never met before in person. So it's really been a great add to our culture program to really recognize employees in this way and just continue to build community amongst each other. So recognition is another area where I think it's really important for your cultural program. So I did want to take a moment while I was on this call or while I was on this webinar to talk a little bit about what did culture mean during COVID? Because as we feels like we're starting to kind of come out of it, feels like things are, starting to get back to a little bit more of normalcy, if we can ever say that. But I want to talk about some of the things that we did that I do think will help us be even better into our future, because COVID was such a time where people craved connection because they just didn't have it. So finding creative ways to connect and reach out was really important. And I think there's things that will definitely stay as a result of it. So I talked a little bit about this already in our surveys, but, this was a time during COVID where we were really putting our money where our mouth was when we talked about building with the American spirit people, right? And knowing that everything that was going on in the world over the past 15 months. And even it's not like it's over, none of it's over. We're still feeling the impact of what we all experience. But like knowing that we needed to focus on our people first and everything else was secondary to that. We continue to focus on our people first. We, like I said, our headquarters is in Michigan, and we are still today operating at 50% capacity in our headquarters. In fact, we just opened it up to 50% on June 7th, and we didn't have to. We could have opened it up fully, but we are choosing to do that because we don't want people to just like snap back and think that they have to be into the office every day. I mean, people are still trying to like align their lives with what all has occurred. So during COVID and even now, we're continuing to be very flexible, understanding that everyone is in a different situation. Everyone has a different experience or a different set of circumstances, and really having respect and grace for one another during this time. It was really important that we reminded our employees of our values. And while we all, are not going to be perfect all the time, like we really needed to lean on that foundation that we had over the, during that time. So what did that mean? I mean, first it meant we communicated and communicated and communicated. I mean, anyone out there who was involved in setting up what the rules were in their organization for coronavirus, or, what were the processes and procedures, I mean, just bless you, because it was always a moving target, right? And so this is just a screenshot of our intranet. Our intranet is called Dirt, actually. So this is just a screenshot of our intranet that, we are updating this almost like hourly, I felt like at points in time, and making sure that all of our team members had the resources that they needed to get their jobs done at any given time, no matter where they were in our organization. We also wanted to take the time. Well, that was important. That was the business side of things. We also wanted to take the time to really, encourage team members to learn when they wanted to rest when they needed to. We offered something called Mindful Monday, where individuals could participate in like meditation and yoga activities from wherever they were. So we did a 16-week program with that. We were offering constant like learning opportunities. We have something called Webinar Wednesday, which is these really short, like 30-minute sessions on just like different software applications or tools, or just like, how do I do this one thing that everyone has to do in the company? It could be something as silly as like doing your timesheet, or it could be something like how to, complete a performance review. So there's all different types of Webinar Wednesday offerings that we do on a regular basis. And then we also have a library where people can go back to them. So, if people wanted to do something, wanted to take their mind off things, wanted to learn, wanted to develop during this time, there's certainly that opportunity, as well as if people just needed to take the time to kind of like relax and be mindful, we wanted to offer that opportunity as well. So I wanted to talk to this slide in particular about communication. And I think, if you put yourself back a year plus ago and think about those times, it was scary. I think all of us probably had a sense of, dread or a sense of fear. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I certainly had that at times. And so we knew that communicating and hearing from our leaders was more important than ever at that time. So we almost immediately into the pandemic, started offering a 1 hour, basically Zoom session with our president, CEO, Ryan Maybach, and our chief operating officer, Chuck Binkowski, where, they would say a few words. They would kind of talk about, like, this is what we know, this is what we think, very unscripted, but pretty transparent. And then we would allow team members to just ask any question that they wanted. There's a chat function. You can just type in whatever question you have. And these guys are brave enough and courageous enough to take any question on. This is just a snapshot of a really cool moment that happened. It's probably about, it was April. We were doing them like every other week, and I can see on the computer it was April. Towards the end of the month, the team members were just like, wow, this is really cool that we're doing this. We're so thankful to have leaders like Ryan and Chuck. We just really want to thank them for providing us constant updates, constant communications, and being really honest. Because I do think, like, early on, they said, hey, we don't know exactly how this is going to impact our business. Nobody really did at that time. But they were honest about that. They didn't try to make it up. They're humble enough leaders that they are going to say, hey, we're going to keep communicating what we know, and we're just going to tell you, where we are. Luckily, we figured it out. We, pushed through it. Our teams are awesome. We kept building in the places we could build, and we didn't build in the places we couldn't build, and, figured it out and managed through it. So a group of team members said, hey, we want to say thank you. We figured out a way to let everyone except Ryan and Chuck know that we were going to do this thank you campaign. And we asked them to show up signs to Ryan and Chuck. They thought it was pretty cool. But we've continued these forms of communication even forward. I mean, we had communications before. Now it's just like all the time with these two guys in particular. We're not doing them every other week. We've limited them to monthly now, and they're called the Barton Malow Family Huddle. We branded them. We've made tweaks along the way. It's not on Zoom. We have a new platform. It's actually the platform we're using right now to stream this webinar today. But I think for people to be able to see the care and the concern in the eyes of our leaders, for people to be able to connect with them every other week, it did wonders for our culture. I'll also say, though, that if we had never done something like this before, it would have been really weird to start it then. But because we had already been on this journey together, and because these two individuals in leadership are so comfortable, being very transparent, leading these types of conversations, answering questions on the fly, like it only made it that much easier. So again, that goes back to, do what makes sense for your organization. Don't just do it because somebody else is doing it. Do it because it makes sense. And this is what made sense for us. The last thing, I don't think this is the last thing actually, but next thing I wanted to mention was, going back to that connection concept. Part of your culture is for people to be able to connect with others, to build, to network with others, to have relationships with others. Prior to COVID, we did a lot of in-person meetings, and I'm hoping that we will get back to that. But we also try to connect people as much as we can over our intranet, over our Yammer platform, and then, more recently over Microsoft Teams. Anyone that didn't know how to use Microsoft Teams before the pandemic, I'm sure is very well versed at this point. But Microsoft Teams has given us the opportunity to connect our team member networks and really provide a place where they can have conversation, where they can share, resources together. We have 3 main team member networks at this point at Barton Malow, and we're always kind of looking at, what could be the next one. But the three that have been active prior to COVID and continue to be active today, one is a parent and caregivers network. One is our Mosaic team member network, where we really learn about how diverse we are at Barton Malow. We give people the opportunity to share their experiences, share their background, share their, what makes them who they are. It's a very, very active team member network. They always have events going on. They always have different webinar series opportunities, and they're always posting articles. It's actually really, really cool. I've learned a lot from them. And then our last one's The Bridge, and that is for our young professionals who are moving, kind of into the more professional space after coming out of college and joining Barton Malow. Just wanted to give them the opportunity to get together. So that's also been a successful part of our cultural program. Hey, Barton Malow is at its foundation a family-owned company, family-controlled, employee-owned. But we have so many people within our organization that are connected to each other, either as friends, as family, or have worked together for so long that a lot of times people just become family. That isn't the essence of who we are at Barton Malow. So these are just like some examples of things we did during COVID. Usually we have a very active take our sons and daughters to work day. So we figured out how to do that at home. The last couple of years, we did actually some virtual bingo. We've done that a few times with kids. We did a virtual tailgate for one of our projects that was supposed to open. It was a baseball park that was supposed to open. It didn't, but we had a virtual tailgate party anyway. And then another really fun thing we did during COVID was everyone was cooking. Everyone's at home cooking. So we found a company that would build a cookbook for us, and we just had our employees submit recipes and stuff to build a really fun cookbook. So I realize I'm talking not fast enough, and I want to leave time for questions if there are any. So, connecting with our clients and partners was also super challenging during COVID. But really meeting those people where they are, trying to help them with what they needed at that time, that just really aligns with who we are at Barton Malow. So whether that meant, we have a COVID self-assessment. Do you want to use ours? Do you want to use our platform? Like, just helping our clients solve their problems and getting them what they needed just went a really long way during COVID. And hopefully it'll go a long way moving forward as well. These are just a couple of examples of things that we helped them with over the past 15 months. So as part of our core purpose, building with the American Spirit, people, projects, and communities, communities is part of everything we do at Barton Malow. It's our goal as an organization to really positively impact the communities where we build. We don't want to just come in and build a project and leave. We want to make the community a better place to be. So that also continued during COVID. In a typical year, we would do a community week event. We would have various times where we would bring team members together to do activities within the community that bettered it. And so last year was a little bit of a challenge given the restrictions that were out there. So we took that opportunity to say, okay, how can we positively impact our community but do it from home? And we have some really cool people in our organization that were like, well, everyone needs masks right now. Let's make masks. And so we made masks, made things and said thank you to hospital employees. Our really cool community give back activity that we found was actually the Library of Congress has all of these old letters that they needed transcribed into digital format. So we offered that as an opportunity to our team members. Like, who wants to help out the Library of Congress? There's just so many like different things that you can actually like help people out, even from, you know, your desk at home or your couch at home, that you don't realize. So we continued on with that. And I think some of that stuff we'll continue to do, you know, for this year and beyond. This is a little bit more about our community week. So in essence, like a few things just to remind you that we just talked about. When it comes to your cultural program, you really need to look at, you know, what makes sense for your organization. What is something that can be consistently carried through and consistently in terms of behavior, in terms of activities. I would say if you're just kind of embarking on a cultural program, don't start off trying to take on the world, right? Start off in small pieces and add things along the way. Think about communication. Think about recognition. Think about, you know, what can you do to develop your employees, learning and development. But all in all, just make sure that whatever you do is something that you can continue to do for many years to come. And I think that's what will help you have a successful cultural program, and also help you to, you know, not only attract new team members or employees, but keep them, you know, along the way, because that's the goal, right? Once you get them in the door, we want to keep them for as long as we possibly can. So I'd love to open it up now for any questions that people have. But again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Tina, that was great. So I wanted to ask you, obviously Barton Malow, like we said, you've got 3,000 employees. So a lot of construction firms are much, much smaller. They're small companies that probably don't even have an HR department, let alone, or maybe they have one person who's office manager / HR / payroll, and that person's doing everything. What is one way that you think that a smaller firm can do those small incremental changes that you mentioned just a moment ago?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Jen, and I get that question a lot. So the one thing that I think that you really just need to focus on to start out with is just making sure that all your team members or employees, we call them team members at Barton Malow, so I say team members a lot. So making sure that all of your team members like really understand, like, what are we here to do? What are we trying to accomplish? And that is something that you'll probably never get 100% of the people to know all the time, because you're also constantly like hiring new people, right? Like you're bringing on new people, or people, you know, might choose to go elsewhere or retire or whatever. So, you know, there's going to be this constant churn. But I think the more that you can communicate that, if you can communicate it through your leadership, if you can communicate it through, you know, your mission statement on your email signature, on your website. I worked at a place where I was responsible for a one-page newsletter on a weekly basis, right? So, and at the time, it was when fax machines were still a thing. So I'm that old.
A little.
Yeah. So it was called the Friday fax, right? And so my job was to like create this little one-page newsletter about like what happened that week, and then fax it to people. Eventually, very quickly, once I started it, it turned into email, because that became a little bit more, you know, acceptable. But Friday fax, one pager, like, this is what's going on. So if you can, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a one pager. It could be like, can you send 3 bullets out to the team every week? And one of the bullets is like, this is what we're meant to do. This is why we're here. And here's examples of how we got it done this week. But yeah, again, like super little things. I also think employee recognition goes a long, long way. So if you can start an employee of the month or an employee of the quarter, and make a big deal out of it where, you bring everyone together and like, here's our employee of the month, or can you put it in that weekly newsletter, or can you have a luncheon, every once in a while just to bring people together. I will say like food goes a long way with people, and it's not that expensive when you put it into perspective. It's not that expensive to pull people together and get some sandwiches and some, bottled waters or soda. So, yeah.
I mean, and that is something worth mentioning, that most of the things we're talking about do cost money, but it costs a lot more money to look for a new employee and rehire people. First, I mean, obviously we're here to recruit new people, but you got to keep the ones that are already there. And I think it's, you don't leave a company, you leave a boss kind of thing. So you want to make sure that everyone's buying in at all levels of the organization. So how do you go about that? Like if you have maybe a leader that doesn't necessarily seem like they put as much emphasis into culture as you think is necessary, how do you guys circumvent that?
Yeah, so I usually suggest in this case to like find your allies, right? And if your leader is not an ally, I would find someone who maybe like, and if you're not great at, if you can't get the message across to your leader yourself, like I think finding allies, and particularly finding allies that can get the message to the leader, but really like presenting a case of like, hey, I think we should do this, and here's all of the reasons why. And I think bringing the data to the table, doing your research, coming at it from a committee focus. I understand, a lot of times if you are like the one HR person or the marketing person, or, you're just like one person in the entire organization that you feel like is really into this, it does take some time to generate followers or fans or community around it. So I think finding a person or a couple of people, building out a little plan, aligning it to the goals of your organization. I would guess that any organization out there, one of their top priorities is like hiring, recruiting, or keeping the talent that they have. Like, I don't think there's anyone out there right now that's like, oh no, I have all the people I need. Maybe there is, maybe I'm completely wrong, but like, hey, talent's an issue. And if you want good talent, if you want to attract the best of the best, like you need to have a message for them, and you need to give them a reason why they should come to work every day. So
great.
Find your tribe, build your tribe. You can do it.
And I guess it is important to note that if someone's watching this and you're not in a leadership position or official leadership position, you can lead from any place on a team,
totally.
Right? And I know it. I've always, and I don't know if it's because of a marketing background, but always felt like, a culture captain, somebody who wanted to make, and no matter what, if I was a marketing assistant or a marketing director, I always came in and I think it's important for everyone to realize you don't have to be the president of the company or the HR director to make a difference in the culture of your company.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I mean, I will say when I first got into my role of being focused on internal communications and employee engagement, like I was the only person on the team. I had no one reporting to me. I had, some resources around the company that could help me, but like I really had to figure it out. And there were times where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Like there's people that think what I do is stupid, like they weren't bought in on it. And you're never, again, it's a time where you're never going to have 100% of the people on the boat. There's always going to be some naysayers. Like my mantra is kind of just like set that aside, like haters are going to hate, right? And just like focus on the majority, focus on the good, focus on, what are you trying to accomplish? But yes, you can lead from any spot in your organization. I truly believe that it takes passion, and it takes, some elbow grease, and it takes like being able to understand what's going on in the business at the time, and how can I relate what I want to do with what the business needs are. And you can get there pretty easily.
Absolutely. And find that, like you said, find that ally to help you with your mission.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, I thank you so much, Dana. I greatly appreciate you sharing Barton Malow's best practice with us. It was good to catch up with you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thanks again for having me.
Of course. I'm hoping that our viewers learned something that they can take back to their own companies. I know that I did. So no matter what, again, like we said, no matter what your role is. For everyone, the webinar was recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel for further viewing. I encourage you all to follow, like, and subscribe us on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn so you don't miss our next webinar and other resources. Also follow, like, and subscribe to Barton Malow. They share some really amazing content on all their channels as well. And that's all we have for today. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks. Enjoy your day. Take care.